Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Hello. I hope you're excited for this because today we are talking about securing, backing up, and optimizing Kubernetes containerized environments. As organizations increasingly adopt containerized environments, the challenges of maintaining security, efficiency, and reliability have become central concerns. These concerns are likely why you are here today. Together, we'll be learning on today's EcoCast some strategies for Kubernetes security, how to optimize container performance for better efficiency, and ways to overcome common vulnerabilities and achieve scalability. Luckily, the awesome folks at Keeper Security, Lacework, Rubrik, Dynatrace, and Lightbits Labs have sent some of their top experts to help us navigate this conversation and share the best tools and strategies to achieve a secure and optimized containerized environment and make your implementation of the tools used to manage the environment seamless. This is going to be a great day, and I cannot wait to get started. So let's dive right in. I want to start by saying hello. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and I've got my fellow moderators in the wings, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward here on live chat and to help out with some aspect of today's EcoCast as well. Okay, let's talk prizes. I know you are all waiting for that. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. And with that last little thing, I believe we are indeed ready to rock. Today we have the incredible Trevor Pott, solutions architect, here to open up today's EcoCast and get our minds set to approach this topic. Trevor, as always, I'm excited to hear what you have prepared for us today. So why don't you go ahead and take it away, and I'll meet you on the other side.
Thank you for that. And welcome everyone to this event, the topic of which is securing, backing up, and optimizing Kubernetes and containerized environments, which is a bit of a mouthful. So who am I to be giving you this keynote? Well, I'm not really anybody important, but I am someone who's had to actually implement a bunch of this stuff. Started my life as a sysadmin and went through a whole bunch of career changes and am now a solutions architect. For the most part, I spend my time telling people, hey, this is what the consensus on best practices to do this thing is, and then sadly watching them usually not do it. As you may imagine, my test lab is the stuff of nightmares, as I imagine many of the people who are attending this event can truly relate. And that brings us to Kubernetes. Containers, perhaps more generally, but Kubernetes especially. If the topic of this event is supposed to be something about backing up, optimizing, or otherwise just managing and maintaining containers in general, but Kubernetes very specifically, Kubernetes is anything except easy. It's gotten better, don't get me wrong, but still a lot of work. And this is where, my primary advice goes against what I would normally say in most other keynote situations, which is actually the vendors need to be listened to. And one of the big reasons for that is simply that the vendors are a really good understanding of what is possible. Even now with Kubernetes being largely a mainstream and mature solution, it's the ecosystem around it is still evolving. and best practices are still evolving, and in some cases quite rapidly. Vendors bring to the table what is possible, especially when it comes to things like backups and optimization. And the flip side of that, of course, is that vendors do speak in marketing and hype. So it's pretty important to take what the vendors tell you and vet that through the community, which of course means if you are doing anything with containers at all, it's incredibly important to maintain a network of professional contacts to help you sanity check whatever it is you're planning to do. Backups have always been something of a problem. There's the old saying, if your data doesn't exist in at least 3 places, then it doesn't exist. Something that I have said and written about many, many times in my career, and it doesn't change. The importance of it certainly doesn't change. But with Kubernetes, it's somewhat more difficult, in part because you can have very ephemeral workloads, you can have static workloads, and Kubernetes tends to be used in multi-cloud environments. As we have recently seen, monoculture, especially in the cloud, can be very, very bad. One issue with a script on a cloud vendor side can delete everything you have, including your backups, has been very publicly displayed recently. And as a follow-on from that, your backups don't exist until they're tested, and that includes any of your multi-cloud backups. With containers especially, we have to pay attention to the environmental challenges that come with all of this. As opposed to a VM, which takes its entire kernel with it every time, containers don't, at least not every time. So we have to pay attention to the environment that they're going into. Operations is key, especially for containers, because of the complexity, because of the constantly evolving ecosystem, and because containers tend to be used in cloud and especially multi-cloud environments, which are even more complex. Integrating security into those operations is, obviously important, but it's something that has to occur more than just having 2 teams work side by side. SecOps as a concept, as much as I hate hype and buzzwords, actually really matters here. The integration of these 2 teams, getting the processes and the politics behind all of this worked out so that when there are security concerns, they are addressed quickly and that security becomes a part of the design. The goal is to make security invisible. And that is especially difficult when you're dealing with a multi-cloud scenario where you can have radically different environments between your on-premises, your one or hopefully more than one public cloud vendors, which may have different authentication environments, which may have different security policies. In the end, your biggest strength here is going to be your ability to connect with your community and sanity check anything that you feel even remotely worried about. Good luck, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the event. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trevor. And really great way, really kind of face value way of approaching this technology, this solution. And thank you for that. We've got a couple good questions here that have popped up due to your keynote already. And yeah, good luck, everyone. Today, we're going to have a good time. We're going to figure out some good strategies so that you do know how to implement them and feel comfortable. I have got a poll up here. This poll is asking, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So this might be something you're rapidly looking to do in the next kind of 6 months, maybe 6 to 12, maybe more than a year out, 12 to 24. or maybe you're just not sure. You're here gathering some information, getting a sense of what the options are and how you could potentially implement those options. And that's okay too. So excited to have you here learning and getting a sense of what is evolving in the world of containerized environments. Now, I'm going to leave that up for just a minute, but I will shortly be introducing our first speaker here. And our first speaker is coming from the team at Keeper. And I'm quite excited about this because not only do I have Jonathan Padilla, who's going to be presenting, but my fellow moderator is going to be joining, Jess Steinbach. And there's going to be a fun game involved here that could potentially win you all a little bit of money. So I do suggest you buckle in, get ready, and see what is in store here on today's EcoCast. So again, formal introduction, we have Jonathan Padilla. He's a solutions engineer over at Keeper Security. And my fellow moderator, Jess Steinbach, is here to play a game and teach you guys all about SecOps, DevSecOps, and how that can be used with optimizing Kubernetes containerized environments. And so with that, I'm going to kick things over to you two for a bit of fun. Take it away, you two.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Padilla. I'm a solution and sales engineer here with Keeper Security. And today, we're going to be talking about DevOps and DevSecOps, tools that power the modern IT department. But first, I like GIFs. Hey, Jess, what's going on there? Why are you all, what's happening? What's going on?
Jonathan, I mean, you told me that I was going to be playing some hockey, so I showed up ready to play some hockey, man.
That is true.
As I understand it, we're going to play some hockey here because we're giving away a prize to, or a gift card to everyone in the audience who signs up for a demo with Keeper Security today, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. It's not just one. It's for everyone that's on this webinar today and schedules a demo with us. They will be getting a gift card individually.
I love that. And now here's where the fun part comes in. So I get to play for your gift card. So today you need to be cheering me on because I am earning you money. So I'm going to be trying to get some pucks into nets, and every goal that I make adds $10 to that gift card. So every goal I make is bringing that dollar value up that you will get when you sign up for that demo. So you need to be cheering me on. And I think we should probably play some hockey. What do you think, man?
I'm ready for this. I'm ready for that. But maybe not ready, but I'm going to try.
You know, I feel like I got to do like yeah. No, I can't throw that helmet. All right. Well, let's, since we're playing some digital hockey, I need to be able to see here. So let's get this hockey screen up and going. We'll give it a little test run.
All right.
All right. So here's how this goes. I'm going to shoot at the net. Every puck that I get in, you guys all get $10 added onto your gift card. Are you ready? Let's do this. All right. I'm going to go right. Oh! Stupid goalie. Okay. Let's try that one. Swipe. This game is harder than I thought. Swipe. What? How did I go out? Okay. Oh my goodness. Just one. Oh, yes.
That's $10.
$10 for all of you out there. Yes. I am a hockey master. Woo! All right. Well, I feel like I shouldn't push my luck any more than that. So let's get back into it, and I'll see you at the next period break.
All right, man. That was fun. That was great, Jeff. That was $10 in the pocket there. We'll see you at the next session. We got 3 more quarters to go on this. Let's see if she can earn you some more. But first, what about the modern IT department? How it functions? There's a terminology I hear that gets thrown around a lot, and it's called PAM. What is PAM anyway? And I do want to read this verbatim. This is highly important. And so let's define PAM. So PAM refers to a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy comprising of people, processes, and technology. To do what, though? To do what? It's to control, monitor, secure, and audit all human and non-human actions and privileged identities that they're utilizing and activities. across the entire enterprise. That's what PAM is. PAM is defined as that. PAM is not this product called PAM. And if there is one out there called PAM, then that's the one I'm getting. No, but really, we're going to get into PAM. And let's understand a PAM complexity report here in 2023. So 2023 PAM complexity report states out of 400 IT and security executives and their PAM solutions that 84 of them want to simplify their PAM solution. 68% of them pay for wasted features. Now, I know this all too well. In my last organization, I would get this product to cover this feature sets, and it has all other feature sets that I didn't need. And then I have to buy another product to then cover some other feature sets because this product didn't cover some feature sets. And all of a sudden, it's become disparate. I'm paying for separate platforms here and there to cover a strategy, my PAM strategy. Check this out. 85% require dedicated staff to manage and maintain this PAM platform. I'll state this, I'll be transparent. Open source is great. There's some great products out there, but one of the things I'm finding, and I found personally, is that, wow, the amount of time and staff it takes to manage, maintain, and secure those platforms. And that financial cost is heavy when you're paying for those dedicated resources. So let's look at this. So on average, IT teams only really use about 62% of their PAM functionalities. All right, that's not okay. I like the number to be at 100%, because on 100%, then that platform is falling into the user paradox adoption. Let's look at some other 5 benefits that IT leaders seek in a PAM solution. They want to monitor and manage privileged access, right, to systems, to applications, to web apps, whatever it may be, resources. Preventing data breaches. That's one of the biggest things. We want to prevent data breaches. In order to do that, you have to protect privileged credentials and accesses and information in general. All right, protecting against compromise, right? Privileged credentials. It's so easy for privileged credentials to be compromised. Very easy, even down to a high-level admin, just using credentials that's available to them in clear text, right? I can see the password. I can see the password. Me as an admin, doesn't matter how trustworthy I am, I can see the credential. That could lead to accidental breaches. For example, someone looking over my shoulder. I lost my laptop, and oh my God, I saved all my passwords there in clear text. And they also want to ensure that privileged user access is updated to prevent privilege creep. So privilege creep, right? I was in one role that had certain privileges, but now I moved to another role. There was a transition period, but for some reason, now I have 2 privileged accesses against me because I used to be in a previous role, but they never pulled that other role's access away from me. Privilege creep. That's bad. So let's look at this. In addition to the respondents, they wanted to simplify the solution in this manner. Easy to deploy. Yeah, that's kind of like a number one when I think about solutions in my organization. Is it easy to deploy? Because it's not, I don't know if I want to get into that. I don't have time for that right now. I don't have the staff for that right now. Easier to integrate into other systems. Like what, Jonathan? Well, naturally, a lot of organizations use stuff like Azure, Okta, OneLogin for their identities, right? An identity provider. So integrating into those identity providers with single sign-on SAML 2.0 to utilize their usernames and passwords to log in, and SCIM provisioning, system for cross-domain identity management. They want to see some cost savings. This is the nice thing when you can unify a platform. Some cost savings, right? I'm not paying for 3 separate pieces of software, 4, 5, or 6. It's one platform. Consolidated, right? Consolidated, one platform. That requires less staff.
Oh, look at this. So Jess, it's time for you to make some more scores.
All right, so hockey break, period break, number 2. Period break number 2. We're at $10. I'm trying to add some more money for all of you out there. You are welcome. Hang on, this is safety first, guys, right? Okay. Let's do it. Oh, come on, that was totally in. What? Unacceptable. Yes! Yes! Goal number 2. Goal number 2. All right, I'm trying one more time. I think I've got time. Put me in, coach. Yes! Yes, that's two more. $30 for all of you counting along at home, going towards your gift certificate when you sign up for a demo. Jonathan, back over to you.
Boy, that was a fun second period. I can't wait to see what third period brings us. Let's keep on moving on into this PAM space, this DevOps, DevSecOps, what they're looking for, what they're trying to simplify. What's the solution? Let's check out the solution. The solution is the unified next-gen PAM platform. And this is exactly what Keeper has to offer. Keeper's next-gen unified PAM platform enables institutions to get into that PAM space and have full visibility, security, and auditing over every aspect of the infrastructure. Not just infrastructure, but information, sensitive information, simple information. Information leads to more information. Okay, if you think your lowest end user, and if them getting breached is not going to lead to a bigger breach, it's completely wrong. It's completely wrong. So let's take a look at Keeper's unified next-gen PAM platform. Is it easy to use? Does it unify everything together? Is it cost-effective? Let's check that out. Let's go over here. Let's look at traditional PAM solutions compared to Keeper's next-gen PAM solution. So cost prohibitive, right? We already talked about that. Paying for a solution that you may not be using all the feature sets, and then so you're paying into other solutions to accomplish other things. It's difficult to provision. What I mean by that is you want to utilize this in your whole organization, but with 18,000 users, how are we gonna deploy this? How is this going to get out automatically to 18,000 users? It's difficult to use and inadequate. I'll tell you what, I utilize several PAM systems, and man, I love Shell, but man, Shell on a PAM system, it's like Shell equals hell. It's like, it's hard to use. Isn't there a solution that's just like, it's something a little bit easier to use? Maybe a nice interface where not just myself and my junior DevOps team can get into. Last but not least, inadequate security. What do you mean by that? And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot of security, multiple security strategies to truly secure your solution that you're serving up on-prem. It's not just about firewalling, right? It's not just about firewalling. And it's not just about having an antivirus software on that system. So let's take a look at Keeper's PAM platform. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper to that. Cost effective, right? Fewer products to purchase. Keeper covers all of these strategies, one solution already without being disparate. And so cost effectiveness immediately kicks into play as you're only paying into one platform. Fast provision. We integrate with identity providers. Any identity provider you can think of as far as SAML 2.0 goes, and skim provisioning for that automated provisioning. It's not so difficult anymore when automatically 18,000 users can get automatically created into the platform to get onboarded and utilize the system. Easy to use. Easy to use is highly important. An interface that's intuitive, an interface that is not going to fall into the user paradox adoption because it's hard to use. Right? GUI interfaces are great. Point and click is great, but if it's not intuitive, what's the point? Right? Let me not pass that one up. Pervasive visibility. It really does simplify auditing and compliance reporting against what people are utilizing in your organization. Right? You used to not have that type of visibility or auditing and reporting before because you had no control over this information and it was being used sporadically with no insights. Now you have full insights into what's going on in your organization. Last but not least, world-class security. So Keeper is a true zero trust, zero knowledge platform. And we have our compliances as well, as we'll get into, that regulates all encryption key management at the client end. So client and key management, the client device, your user device, your cell phone that you're naturally, even just as a regular end user, using Keeper, just logging into Keeper, sharing information on their desktops, phones, wherever it may be. Naturally, that security model is there by just the end user utilizing the platform. End user security, cryptology, and security is there. Okay. Let's take a look at what PAM addresses, right? What key points does PAM address? And a lot of organizations are faced with, even away from the
full PAM scope. Oh, password management, well, passwords getting breached. Single sign-on security, that's important. Sharing of passwords, oh boy, that scares me. You definitely want some insights to that for compliancy and auditing reasons. Right? These are key pain points that every single institution, whether you're an SMB shop over to a Fortune 5000 shop, you know these are the things you deal with. So let's check out Keeper's Unified PAM solution. 3 platforms encompassing in one system to create that PAM strategy, right? That PAM strategy. So Keeper Enterprise Password Manager, our EPM, right? I love it. It enables your organization to protect, share, discover information, and keep it protected and controlled, and allows the administrators to finally automate auditing and compliances on how it's going to utilize. Secrets management, right? That gets a little bit deeper. Protecting CI/CD command pipelines like Ansible, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, or GitLab Actions, whatever you're utilizing. Right? Secrets management is important to obscure that information, to ensure that it's not in clear text. One of the things that drive me nuts is in the past when I'm working with files, that information like usernames or passwords are in clear text inside of a config file, for example, which is like scary to me. If that system gets breached and that information's in clear text, we're done. We're breached. Now, Keeper Connections Manager, I love this. One of the biggest strategies and pain points for any organization is how do I allow regular users or administrators and DevOps and SecOps to access systems and platforms, our entire infrastructure for that matter, in a secure, compliant, conformed fashion. Without the need of VPN, right? Without the need of VPN, it's a true statement, because how the platform functions. Keeper's PAM encompasses all of these 3 platforms to accomplish those cybersecurity strategies you're trying to cover without being disparate, without paying into separate platforms. Let's take a look at the 2 spectrums here. This is the end user side, and this is the SecOps, DevOps side. Let's just take a look at the natural use of the end user side. End users in your organization as a whole, you guys utilize an identity provider, Office 365, aka Azure, and so better stated. Okta, Ping, OneLogin, JumpCloud, those identity providers. It's important that we can integrate with those platforms that you're using in an organization so your users can still use the same username and password they have to log into their computers, to log into their cloud environments, such as Office, as well as to log into Keeper as well, and keeping them from having multiple credentials and keeping track of that to get access to the information. So SAML enabled, that's awesome. Your users will love you for that. It simplifies their life, and when you simplify their life, a platform becomes a little bit easier to use, and it doesn't fall into the user paradox option. All right, so password management. This is the natural use of passwords that your end users want to utilize, whether logging into a web application or a desktop application. Right, your organization is trying to enforce long, strong, unique passwords, 20 characters on up. We won't remember those. I won't even remember those. So let's have that EPM, that password management system, remember that for us, have it stored in there in a secure fashion where we can utilize it and now share it in a secure fashion amongst users and our team. Let's get on to the SecOps, DevOps side. Secrets management, right? You guys know that all too well. The ones that know this stuff, Jenkins, GitHub, Terraform, that HashiCorp stuff, that's true infrastructure stuff. And you know just as well as I know, if any one of your configuration files or CI/CD command pipelines get breached and that information sitting in clear text, it's going to lead that cyber criminal to more information, deeper into your systems and your infrastructure. Okay, forget trying to go after your end users now. I got access to your information, to your code, your SDK. Important to keep that with Secrets Manager, keep it protected. Connections Manager, connecting RDP sessions. You know, you guys do that all the time. SSH, heavy on that. Wait, and real quick, when was it okay to save SSH keys local on your device in the .ssh directory? You know, cyber criminals can easily get access to that directory, grab those keys, look at your known host file. Well, you already know what's about to happen. Protecting those connections are important, and Keeper Connections Manager does just that. Protect the credentials and share the connections out to critical systems, information, and infrastructure in a secure, compliant, secretive fashion, right? Connections without, apologies about that, connections without your end users knowing what that information is or those credentials. Now on the admin side, I love this. On the admin side, security auditing. This is where that reporting and auditing compliancy comes into play. Having full insights onto what's going on in your organization, who's using what, when, where, why, and how. Whether it's a user or a machine or a system or a code or SDK or a script. Full insights into what's going on at every single given day, time, location, IP address. Gets deep. Let's keep on going here. Oh, look at this. Round 3. So Jess, it's time for you to make some more scores.
All right. We are ready for period break number 3, and we are at $30 for all of you lovely folks counting along at home. $30 to anyone who signs up for a Keeper Security demo. I am going to see if I can get you a few more dollars on that gift card. Let's get ready. Ready, go. I hope you are all cheering me on at home here. This is very hard to see in. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to operate a computer with a hockey helmet on. Oh, come on. Goalie. What? Yes. You are welcome. That is $40 coming at you in your gift card from Keeper Security when you sign up for a demo. Jonathan, we've got one more break. I think we're going to do some overtime because I want to try to get a few more dollars on that gift card. But for now, back on over to you.
Oh, at least you got one goal. That brings us up to $40. $40 thus far on this gift card. That's pretty good. That's pretty good if I say so myself. Let's keep on digging through this discovery. Credential rotation. So PAM, one of the biggest things with PAM and these cybersecurity strategies is rotation of credentials. Making that easy. Why? Maybe you're dealing with multiple systems, hundreds of systems, virtual machines, physical machines, Azure accounts, Active Directory accounts, SQL accounts. I mean, credentials and password rotations, that is it's the bane of my existence. It's horrendous. It really is. It's horrendous. So Keeper PAM makes credential rotation easy. And I love this. I absolutely love password rotations. This alleviates my life and my end user's life as well. My DevOps, especially, our life cycles here. Check it out. Something that's not so cumbersome to install. We don't want to mess with firewall rules. You know how many times I want to implement a system where it's like, okay, in order to do this, you have to have this static IP address or an NATed, port forwarded, firewall rules on over to the system over here. And it's just like insane. And you have to install this agent and connect up. I start wondering, am I really securing things here? Am I really securing things here? Am I doing what I'm doing right now? Is it just causing me more of a security risk? So especially those agents, memory leaks, holes, we don't believe in that here at Keeper. So we do make it easy. We make it very low impact to implement. We have no agents. There's no need to open up external ports. Command line tools and scripting is not needed. Again, shell is hell. It can be. That's cool if you can do it, but what if it was just easier? Now you can do it, and now your junior admins can do it. And hey, you can enable people now. You can enable people. Do you hear what I'm saying? Enabling people in security. This is how we accomplish security. Enabling so you don't fall again into the paradox adoption, user paradox adoption. Right. We can rotate on-premise or cloud credentials. It doesn't matter what's going on. And we have very flexible rotation actions. For example, scripts that run post a password rotation. Let's get a little insight. Let's get an insight to this. So this is the vault you're looking at. And this is considered a PAM credential that can get utilized to rotate a credential against Barbara Dillard. All right, that's her username. Password. Rotation button right there. Isn't that cool? A little rotation. You know how many times like people like, hey man, not just for the admins. What about the end user? Is there something my end user can click on? Rotate a credential, something easy, a self-service portal or something. And so that's really nice. I love that interface. It's just easy. There's no command lines going on. There's no scripting. And when this rotation happens, what do we have yet again? We're going to get reporting on that. The user did this against which credential at which day, which time. Let's keep on looking at this. I love this. Complex. You can make the credential complex and enforce complexities. Make it long, strong, and unique. Rotate it on a scheduled basis. I love this. I love this. I didn't have to script this in cron tab or systemd or Windows Task Scheduler. It's right here. It's right here for the having. Now, this is important. This is important. Now, when we're thinking about utilizing such a platform, and here we are stressing about security, it's important that the platform you're utilizing complies to some audits and compliances as well. And I am happy to state that Keeper is SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001 certified and compliant. We're Fed ramped and state ramped, and that is awesome. We've been working hard at that. HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant. That falls into a lot of spaces, if you ask me. PCI DSS level 1, trustee, right? We got, FIPS 140-2 validations. We utilize FIPS 140-2 validated modules, right? EU-US Privacy Shield. We are compliant through and through. If anyone wants to know more about our compliances, please, again, schedule that demo. Please schedule that demo with us. Get a mutual NDA going. We're going to give you our SOC 2 report. We're going to give you our attestation report, because it's not okay for companies to say there's zero knowledge, there's zero trust, they're compliant. We need to certify that. Last but not least, we're going to give you our third-party pen test reports. And let's keep on digging through here. Overtime. What's this? I'm going to give Jess one last time to make you guys a little bit more money for this gift card before you schedule that demo with us, so you can check some things out on our side. Let's see what we can do here, Jess.
All right, here we are in OT time, and that means I have one more chance to get all of you $10 more on your gift card from Keeper Security when you sign up for a demo. And remember, that is for everyone here in the audience today. Everyone here with us who signs up for a demo will get this gift card. Not just one person. It's not a raffle. This is a gift for everyone. This is really hard to see out of. Who thought of hockey helmets as an idea in the workplace? This is not safe workplace gear. Ready? Yes. Okay. So I hope that you are all cheering me on at home. I can feel all those positive vibes coming through the screen right now. Let's see if I can get you guys one more $10 bump added to your gift certificate. What? Oh, I got it on the first try. First try. OT shot. Yes, 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 yes. I am the hockey master. You guys are all getting $50. $50 as a gift card when you sign up for your demo. That is awesome. Jonathan, I am pumped up. This has been such a great day. I'm going to hand things back on over to you. I got to go take a victory lap or something.
That's super awesome. That brings this gift card up to, $50? Hey, that's not bad. How many people are on this call? I don't even want to do the calculation. I'm not even going there. Forget it. But anyway, I urge you guys to schedule a demo and check out our platform. I think you guys will think it's awesome. Anywhere from the basic password management for your end users, all the way up to secrets management, connections manager for any DevOps, DevSecOps environment. You're trying to find a way. If you're trying to find a way to cover your cybersecurity strategies, and you're just feeling like everything seems so disparate, please reach out for a demo. We would love to provide you a demo, go into trial, do a proof of concept to see if this platform is for you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan and Jess. You've made this EcoCast pretty darn exciting from the get-go. I feel like I need to up the entertainment value in some way now. Any ideas out there in the audience? Some kind of sports gear, cool costume, new haircut. Do I sing a song for you all? I don't know. Let me know in the questions tab. Now, obviously exciting news. You could basically sign up and be guaranteed that $50 gift card. So if you did not have time to scan the QR, I'm going to quickly throw the URL keeper.io/goal into the chat and you can grab it. And voila, I think it's there now. If you don't see it, I'll double check to make sure. But with that said, thank you once again, Jonathan and Jess. That was really great. We are at time, so they won't be sticking around for any kind of further live Q&A. But if you did have any questions, the team at Keeper will follow up with you. And thank you for sending those in. The more you interact with us and the more you ask questions, the better it is. Okay, John is saying I should play the violin. Sadly, John, the only instrument I ever took was percussion. So if you guys want like a xylophone solo or something, maybe I can pull that off for you. Now, there is a poll up. I know a bunch of you are already answering it there, but the poll is just asking what additional information you would like about the Keeper security solution. So go ahead and fill that in. We're going to have a poll like this after each session. And essentially, this is your wish list. This is your request. Are you looking for a data sheet? Are you looking for pricing? Do you want to do a personal demo? What are you looking for? Keeper and the other teams, as these polls go through, will be handing you exactly what you're looking for after today's EcoCast. So definitely take a second to fill that in. Now, if you haven't already ventured over into the handouts tab today, that is where you're going to find valuable information, handouts that you can take and keep with you after today's EcoCast, many of which are not easy, if at all, able to be found online and are typically things like ebooks, data sheets, solution briefs, and you're going to want to check those out and review them after today's event. So pop over there. From Keeper today, we have Keeper Secrets Manager, KSM. It is a data sheet. It is here for you to help defend against supply chain attacks with a modern cloud-based platform for securing infrastructure secrets, such as API keys, database passwords, access keys, and certificates. Whew. So much exciting news, but for now, I've even a little more excitement for you. That's right, it is time for the first prize giveaway. So, quick reminder, you do need to be here live and present at the EcoCast to win. Other than that, the full T's and C's are in that handouts tab. But let's see who's the lucky winner of the first of 3 $300 Amazon gift cards. Little drum roll, please. And the first lucky winner today is David Rudick from Maryland. Congratulations. As always, we'll be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And do not forget, there are still 2 more chances to win an Amazon gift card. Plus, there is a best question gift card from each session. So if you haven't been popping in questions for the teams, feel free to start now. Think of some mindful questions that come to your mind as the presentations continue. But for now, let's keep things zipping along on today's EcoCast. Next up in the queue are our friends over at Lacework. Exciting to see so many familiar faces here today. We have James Condon, who is the Director of Security Research. He will be leading a lively and timely discussion here for us, and he will be joined for a small segment by Tim Chase, Field CISO. So Tim and James, so glad to have you back on, and I'm going to let you take it away. The stage is all yours.
All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about compromised credentials in 2024. I'll say that in the past couple of years, we've really started to see more of these attacks. And a lot of times, even if you don't know that it's a compromised credential when an attack or a data breach comes out, when you start to read more about it and kind of understand the root cause, a lot of times it is from a compromised credential. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about these type of attacks. Go to the next slide. And we'll start with some introductions. We'll talk, James and I will introduce ourselves, and then I'll talk a little bit about what are compromised credentials, like why do we care? What are they? And what are the risks of those credentials? Like if they get compromised, why is that such a security risk to the person and to the organization? Then we'll switch it over to James, who will talk to kind of the anatomy of a credential compromise. What does it look like when one of these attacks happen? And then we'll kind of end it with some best practices and mitigations to avoid these type of attacks. And Since I'm talking, I'll go first. My name is Tim Chase. I actually run our field CISO team at Lacework. I've been here about 3 years, and I've been a CISO a couple of times in my past. And I have cloud and application security are kind of two of the things that are nearest and dearest to my heart. So I'm really excited to get to talk today about this particular topic. And then James.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm James Condon. I lead the Lacework Labs team. Our team is primarily focused on researching and discovering threats to the cloud, and then building out detections within our product to catch them. I've spent my whole career in security, doing things like incident response, working in the government to investigate intrusions, and yeah, that's me.
Let's go to the next slide and start talking about like, what is the actual definition of a credential? Like, before we start talking about credentials being compromised and why that's bad, let's just kind of start at the very beginning and understand what a credential is. Obviously, one of the things, when you start learning about identity and you start learning about security in general, authentication is one of those core concepts that you have. So that you can understand whether you even should be logging into an application, and then obviously the authorization. What can you do when you get into an app? And so credentials are those things that recognize a unique user to know that this is who we actually think it is, right? And there are many different types of credentials these days. I think the most common one that we think about are like the username and password, right? Those have been around for quite a long time. And those are the most common credentials that we see kind of day in and day out in the life of a security professional, or just in the life of people doing work in the professional world. And so the role of password and usernames is pretty much the same. One of the changes that we have seen, over time, I've been doing security for I think almost 20 years, and like the passwords, for the most part, we tried to make them more complex. But the problem is that as computing has gotten more sophisticated, that even complex passwords are not as secure as they used to be. But also the number of systems that we have to log into has really grown. And so we really use usernames and passwords for everything. Like if you think of kind of the day in the life of what you use a password for, it's everything from logging into your email to logging into a cloud account to your banking account. They're just everywhere. And so we still use usernames and passwords, maybe with multi-factor authentication, obviously thrown in as an additional level of security. But, the usernames and passwords are still used to understand whether you should have access to something or not, right? And the average professional manages nearly 200 sets of credentials, which is just an astronomical amount of credentials to have to think about. I know that my brain probably could not handle, 200 sets of unique credentials. I can barely remember all of my children's names on a daily basis, right? And having to remember 200 sets of credentials is just nearly impossible. And then when you ask them to be complex on top of that, it makes it even more difficult. And so that's why we've seen people start to use password managers, reuse passwords. That's why credentials are such an important aspect, because not only do we have to use them so often, but a lot of times we tend to store them centrally, or we reuse passwords from application to application, or make them something that we can easily remember. Even when we have a complex password, we tend to make them something that maybe appends a birth date to it, or a wedding date, or something like that. That is guessable with enough time with someone who understands who you are. And so, kind of going into the next slide, the risk, right? So once somebody can get access to a credential, it's kind of like an all access pass sometimes, right? Once you get into the park, you can you have access to all the rides, right? Once you get somebody's credential, you can get in and have all the access that they have. If you compromise somebody's email account through their username and password, all of a sudden you can get into their email, and maybe you can get into all of their productivity applications where they have their budgets and their contact information shared, right? You kind of get this all access pass. And the same thing kind of happens, in a professional world. Maybe you're, a cloud, you work in the cloud and you're a cloud administrator, and you get your credential compromised and somebody logs in. Well, all of a sudden they have access to everything that you do inside of your cloud environment. They have access to the resources, to the permissions, the ability to add, delete, whatever you happen to have in your role or the compromised individual's role. They will be able to have that now too. And so that's why attackers go at this, right? We see this quite often with phishing scams. And once they have these, this is just kind of like an entry path into how they're going to continue to further exploit the environment. So if they get access into your cloud environment, it's kind of like a pivot point, if you will. And it's just a way that they maybe can explore to understand what they can do, what they can see, what data is available. So once they're in, it's just kind of a place for them to start and explore. And so, there are some common attack flows that we have once we get started. We have to recompromise our credential and we start exploiting those. We do see some common attack flows, and now James will walk you through some of those and then talk about how we can mitigate it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. So I'm going to share some real world examples that we're seeing out in the wild. And usually the first question that comes on people's minds is, okay, how are these credentials, how are these identities being compromised? What's the initial access point? So there's a lot of different ways that this could ultimately manifest. One of the most common vectors that we see is like unsecured credentials. And what I mean by that is folks uploading these into GitHub and other public repos, or there being configuration files that are publicly accessible. Now, the good news here is there's been a lot of updates to things like GitHub where they can help revoke keys within AWS. But there's also a lot of other public code repos that these could accidentally show up in. And then in a little bit here, I'm going to give you an example of where these can be found in certain configuration files. Now, that's not the only place. We also see a common attack path, especially in AWS, where instances get compromised, whether it be a vulnerable application that leads to malware on the host. And then from there, they're either searching for credentials on that host or they're contacting a metadata service to get access. The other one is accessing the metadata service through server-side request forgeries on internet-facing applications. That's another common one. We're going to show you an example of that here coming up as well. And additionally, phishing and social engineering. So developers or admins being targeted and then tricked into giving up their keys, or their laptops being compromised and the attackers getting them from there. Now, there's other forms that we might not be super aware of because we're seeing a high volume of this activity. In some underground forums, there's initial access brokers where people will sell access to different accounts. We see a steady increase of access to cloud accounts. In those scenarios, we can't really determine how those were initially compromised. So the next question is, once an attacker has access, what do they do? So we'll be talking about this in the frame of your cloud service provider control plane. Typically, what we see after initial access is there's some discovery activity. Basically, they want to figure out what are the different privileges that the user has and what do they have access to. Now, from here, what we generally will see is they set up new users And they do this in a way both to maintain access to the account, but also to look for workarounds to escalate their privileges. Now, once this is said and done, generally they move on to their objectives. Probably the most common one that we see is hijacking resources. In the example coming up, we'll talk about how they abuse AWS's SES to conduct SMTP, spam and phishing campaigns. We also see cryptojacking being a #1 target. Probably the most damaging scenario, though, is if they get access to intellectual property and other sensitive data that they can ultimately hold for ransom. All right, so now I'm going to walk through a couple real-world examples and how they unfold. Okay, so this first one is Androx Ghost. I need to give you a little background here to explain how we came across it. So here at Lacework, we do our threat detection with what we call composite alerts. Now, composite alerts is essentially taking a whole bunch of different weak signals and correlating them together. They're things that individually would be high volume to kind of triage on their own. But once we see common patterns occurring, we can alert on it. Now, when we were developing one of these for AWS compromised users, one of the first things that we found when we were doing our initial research was this threat called Androx Ghost. So the way that this works is the threat scans the internet for any sort of insecure Laravel environment files. Now, that's a PHP web framework, so we expect those to be public facing. Once these are found, they look for AWS SendGrid and Twilio secrets. Now, if they get access to AWS keys, then typically the first thing that they'll do is create new users, similar to how I described in the previous slide, and then start abusing SES so they can carry out spam campaigns, phishing, and so on. Now, in more problematic scenarios, the attackers could potentially get hands on keyboard and start accessing more sensitive data. Now, the really interesting thing about this story is when we first discovered it over a year ago, we saw a third of the environments that we were monitoring were being scanned by this threat. We were shocked and surprised to see that no one else was really talking about it at the time for how widespread it was. So we ended up publishing this blog that you can see a picture of here. And then in the coming months, we started seeing other people reporting on this as well. Now, over the past year, we've witnessed over 100 different instances of this, and it's become so prolific that the FBI and CISA recently issued a joint advisory warning about this threat. So that's one example of what we're seeing. Another example that's pretty interesting and will kind of tie back to the business use cases is the Capital One breach in 2019. So you might be wondering, okay, why are we talking about this old breach from 2019? And the reason is, despite that this has been around and known for a long time, we still see this attack path heavily used today with high success. So if you're unfamiliar with the Capital One breach, essentially the way it worked is there was a web application firewall that had a server-side request vulnerability, and the attacker used that vulnerability to access the instance metadata service. Now, this metadata service has a lot of different jobs to do, but one of them is giving credentials to instances so that they can do the work that they're intended to do. From there, they got access to one of the roles from the instances, and they were then able to ultimately get into S3 and get a bunch of cardholder information. So what this example shows is we've heard other stories similar to this, but the risk of this is stolen intellectual property. You can imagine that there's potentially a lot of brand damage. There's a lot of relationship building and rebuilding that needs to occur after it. You can often have business downtime, which could affect your bottom line. Regulatory fines, loss of customer trust, those dovetail into those 2 points above. And then with the new SEC reporting guidelines, public companies have stricter reporting requirements for any incidents that they have. Okay, so let me show you how this is manifesting today. So if we rewind, we know that Capital One happened a little over 4 years ago. AWS was quick to develop Instance Metadata Service version 2. Now, version 2 mitigates these server-side request forgeries, being able to easily access that metadata service. But despite this, we've seen that a lot of different environments just haven't implemented this yet. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for that. One, it's not simple and easy to do. It sounds easy in practice, in theory, but in practice can be difficult to do. And then sometimes there's just gaps where the teams that need to know about this information just aren't very aware of how something like server-side request forgery, which might be like a medium level severity, and then using this version 1 of the API, those two themselves aren't too bad, but when you put them together, it creates a very toxic combination. So one of the ways that we've recently seen this manifest was October of this year. This one was interesting because we saw the same threat actor gain access to 12 different environments in a little over a week. And the method that they were using was similar to the Capital One instance. Instead of a web application firewall, this is Grafana. Now they were able to exploit a 3-year-old vulnerability. And obviously, we've known publicly that Instance Metadata Service version 1 can be insecure for the last 4 years. Now, the point that I want everyone to kind of take home with this is this same week that we observed and reported on this, there was a high severity curl vulnerability that came out, and it kind of dominated all the industry news cycles. So the irony here is a lot of people were focused on this new curl vulnerability, while we're seeing, large-scale attacks being carried out using a 4-year-old attack path with a 3-year-old vulnerability. Okay, so now that I've given you a couple of different examples, let's talk about mitigations. So the first one is rapid detection response strategies. The common theme I see a lot in the cloud today, and saw it in enterprise networks in kind of the earlier days, is there's a misconception that we can drive our risk down to zero. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't be doing any hardening, but the fact of the matter is the attack surface is very large, environments change very quickly, and attackers generally rise to a bar that's just a step above whatever their targets are doing. So it's almost an impossible task to think that if you put all your effort into simply risk mitigation, then you're not going to have these problems. So instead, what we recommend is making sure that you are taking time to invest in your detection and response. This will help you mitigate and contain these instances much quicker. Now, for example, we've had multiple customers who've received alerts for the Androx Ghost threat, and then they were able to quickly interdict this before the attackers are able to carry out their objectives. So the main point here is make sure that while hardening is important, you're building the muscle to respond quickly, and you can learn from those responses. The second thing is the role of the security teams. I think cloud security is pretty interesting in general. Most companies have kind of a different setup of who's responsible for what. But in general, we typically have security engineers focusing on hardening practices and making sure that their identities aren't overprivileged. And then you have some other teams that are ingesting the alerts and responding to the threats. Now, it's really important that both these teams are in sync in lockstep. The response teams should be educating the hardening teams on the common attack paths that they should look out for. And then when there is an incident, one of the most important steps of incident response is after everything has been cleaned up is doing a retrospective. So doing these retrospectives will help you figure out, okay, how can we make incidents like this more difficult for the attackers in the future. And then lastly, you don't need to be experiencing security incidents to learn from what's happening. There is a lot of public information being shared about these type of breaches. So we recommend doing kind of a tabletop where you could take an example like Capital One or other recent ones, and then you look at your environment and say, hey, do we have a similar setup that could lead to this? And if so, how can we help mitigate that? Okay, great. So I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. You can always reach out to Tim and myself via the emails here.
All right, all right. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, James. I'm sure you'll get a couple emails shot over to you there. That was an awesome presentation. And you can all see right now that there is a poll up once again asking what additional info you would like to get about the Lacework solution. Again, this is your easy button, your wish list, one simple click, and the team at Lacework will send you the desired follow-up after today's EcoCast. Now, we do not have the time for Tim and James to stick around for Q&A. So again, if your questions were sent in, thank you. And they will be answered in due time by the team over at Lacework after today's EcoCast. That said, we do have some live Q&As coming up. We've got the time budgeted. So make sure you keep those coming in throughout the rest of the EcoCast today. Now, if you are looking to learn more right away, you can click out into that Handouts tab, go check out the ebook, Compromised Credentials in 2024, put on by Lacework there, and it is definitely worth checking out and holding on to so that you can keep your credentials safe as you move forward. All right, well, let's keep this show on the road. Next up in the lineup are our friends here at Rubrik. Back in the house, Rubrik has sent over Jake Robinson, Application Solutions Architect, and we're excited to have you, Jake. Without any further ado, I'm just going to kick things over to you and let you tell us about Kubernetes resilience. Take it away.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. My name is Jake Robinson, and today we're going to talk about data security in a stateless world. We'll get into the stateless question mark in a few minutes, but again, very happy you're here today to listen to me talk about protecting Kubernetes. So let's talk about protecting Kubernetes in general. Kubernetes is a pretty complex platform, and complex in not only technology, but also complex in who actually uses Kubernetes, who needs to manage Kubernetes. So a lot of customers that I talk to have multiple teams show up for the call. So this could be the Kubernetes platform admins, this could be application owners or developers, and also a storage team or a data protection team. And all of these folks have a stake in protecting Kubernetes. So generally what happens is the Kubernetes platform team or maybe an application owner says, hey, we need to protect some persistent data on our Kubernetes cluster or within our application. And so they go to their storage team. Generally what I'm seeing in larger organizations is that it is not necessarily siloed in terms of, hey, I'm only responsible for Kubernetes, or I'm responsible for everything on Kubernetes. So different organizations have different teams. One team might be in charge of data protection for all platforms. So SaaS, on-prem, SAN, all of that, right? The problem that comes into play here is that the Kubernetes team may not know a whole lot about data protection or how the organization does data protection. And then the data protection team or the storage team may not know anything about Kubernetes. And that's okay. I don't expect everybody to know everything about everything, right? And that's really what I'm seeing. And that's where I come into the conversation. Hey, can we bring all these teams together and figure out how we can actually protect Kubernetes? So from what I'm hearing of organizations doing data protection on Kubernetes is that it is tedious. So they might be using some open source solution and they have to manage jobs. They have to manage the storage for where they're backing up their persistent volumes. It gets a little out of control in terms of knowing what they have protected and how old stuff is and how much storage they're using. There's a ton of tedium around managing all that. And we need a better way to both manage that, make that easier, and then also provide observability, the visibility, the reporting that comes along with protecting Kubernetes. So let's talk about what's protected. So inside Kubernetes, there are a couple big things that we need to protect. So the first thing are Kubernetes namespace objects. So this is essentially the definition of the application infrastructure itself. You could have everything from the pod, which is a container or a number of containers actually running the workload. You could have services, exposing ports out to the network. So all sorts of network definitions. We have storage definitions inside our applications. So those are called persistent volume claims. Persistent volume claims are essentially a request or a pointer to some actual persistent storage that we call a persistent volume. And then we might have some more complex things that have to do with the deployments, like what our actual application looks like. So these could be like deployments or stateful sets, replica sets, things like that. Next, I mentioned persistent volumes and persistent volume claims. So let's talk about persistent volumes first. So persistent volumes are where we'll actually store our persistent data. So this could be anything from a database to a static file. Maybe you have a collection of cat GIFs that you're hosting. All of that would live on a persistent volume. And I mentioned the persistent volume claim is the pointer or the request for storage from the Kubernetes cluster itself. And the reason this is important is we'll have possibly two different types of persistent volumes. There are really a number of different types of persistent volumes, but really I'm going to talk about two specifically today. So the question is, hey, why not just protect the entire cluster? Can I not snapshot the virtual machines that are actually hosting the Kubernetes cluster? This requires us to understand Kubernetes cluster architecture a little bit. We're not going to get into that too much today, but the idea behind Kubernetes architecture is really that this is ephemeral infrastructure for the most part. We do have some cluster configuration that could be backed up. We can talk about that a little bit. Overall, protecting the underlying virtual machines, for instance, that are powering the Kubernetes cluster, running the Kubernetes cluster, is generally not going to end up in a clean restore. That's because these containers could be running on any one of those worker nodes. That storage is attached to specific worker nodes, so there's no guarantee that we'll get the persistent volume or the PVC, connected to the right spot. There's a lot of sort of influx state when we start talking about distributed clusters like Kubernetes. Generally, what we recommend, and I think a lot of Kubernetes distributions are recommending, is that you should really focus on backing up the applications themselves and then really invest in good automation to spin up a new Kubernetes cluster whenever you need one. A lot of Kubernetes distributions really make their claim on this, right? Making Kubernetes clusters very easy to spin up and get back running. So infrastructure as code is really the way to go there when we're talking about restoring the Kubernetes cluster itself. What we're really focused on here, and a lot of different Kubernetes data protection solutions out there are focusing on, is the application itself. So everything inside this namespace, which is just a logical container, and the persistent volumes, the persistent data itself. So let's talk about Kubernetes persistent volume backup first, and then we'll talk about those Kubernetes objects and the reason we want to back those up. From a storage admin's perspective, back in the day, maybe not too long ago, the location of persistent data was fairly well known because it was either a storage admin or a virtualization admin actually giving that storage to the application owner or the developer. So they knew where it existed, fairly straightforward. With Kubernetes, now that we have sort of self-service access for developers, we don't really have visibility, as much visibility into that because they're doing their own thing, right? One of the questions, that I get a lot from data protection admins is, hey, how do I protect everything when I don't know where it is? So that's the first bullet point there. Again, I mentioned before, I've seen a lot of different things on persistent volumes inside Kubernetes. Databases, key value stores, cat GIF collection, even something as simple as internal application state is pretty common. For the database aspect, it might be worth the question, hey, why are developers putting databases on Kubernetes persistent volumes to begin with? We have this external relational database service that they could use. They should really be using that because we've got all the tooling, built around it and stuff like that. One of the more common use cases that I've seen for databases actually on a persistent volume is that they want the portability. So I want the ability to not be locked in to a specific relational database provider. So we've opted to make the choice to put the database on persistent volumes inside the Kubernetes cluster itself. So that way, if I pick up and move the app to another Kubernetes cluster, then of course I don't have to have all the migration scripts to move that data from that proprietary relational database service to another one. That's probably the most common use case that I hear. So how we're actually doing persistent volume backups is through Container Storage Interface, or CSI, volume snapshots. And this is an interface that more and more storage providers are producing as part of their container storage interface driver that allow us to have a common way across any Kubernetes distribution to snapshot those volumes. Nice to have that common interface, and the whole point of Kubernetes, right, is to have sort of this general internet operating system that we can run an application anywhere. So let's talk about Kubernetes object backups. Again, this is the definition of our application infrastructure. I've seen a number of use cases for backing up Kubernetes application, including the persistent data, and moving them, say, to another Kubernetes cluster, or even the same Kubernetes cluster. The most common use case I hear about is disaster recovery. Hey, if I lose my Kubernetes cluster, I need to spin up a new Kubernetes cluster and get my application back up and going. So that is the first one. And it's important to note we're talking about Kubernetes objects here as well, not necessarily the persistent data. So even if you have completely stateless applications, customers are using this for disaster recovery. The next one is cloud migration. Hey, we're moving from one Kubernetes distribution to another, or maybe geographic locations as well. I need to pick up my Kubernetes applications and get them migrated over to this other provider. So it's another common use case. A very unique use case, I think, that I've only seen in Kubernetes so far is testing. The question comes up, hey, there's this new version of Kubernetes coming out. We need to be able to test our production applications on this new version of Kubernetes before we actually upgrade our production clusters. We have customers actually doing restores onto a development cluster running a different version of Kubernetes to see what breaks. If you've been around Kubernetes long enough, you know there are breaking changes that do happen to their APIs, and those objects inside that application definition uses Kubernetes APIs for their resources. While organizations could pour through the new Kubernetes documentation, a lot of times it's easier to just automate the process and say, hey, did everything come back up after I migrated or did a restore onto this new version of Kubernetes? So a very unique use case and a great example of using a data protection solution as a development tool as well. So probably the most interesting conversation I have with organizations is around backing up Kubernetes objects at all. The reason being is a lot of times I'll have a conversation that goes something like, hey, we don't really need to back up our Kubernetes metadata for these applications because we deploy everything from code. So it's all in our Git repository. We have all our images stored. So it's really just a matter of getting that persistent data back in those persistent volumes that we need. And that's great. I 100% subscribe to having really good deployment pipelines, but the question is, what happens if those pipelines go down? You need to get your production application back up and going, but for some reason, GitHub is down. For some reason, your image registry is down. There are a number of things that could possibly break in that pipeline. Pipelines themselves are pretty complex setups. Can you guarantee 100% uptime for your deployment pipelines? I am definitely not advocating that you should, never, redeploy your application from code, but it's always good to have that ultimate safety net through Rubrik to restore those Kubernetes objects if and when things really go bad. So let's talk about Rubrik's bread and butter, and that is cyber resiliency. So it's not just good enough anymore to have a backup. You need to have immutable backups. When adversaries are coming in to our network, the first thing that they are targeting is those backup systems. So you have no good, clean way to get back. So Rubrik has you covered there. The next thing is ransomware detection. As good as the endpoint and perimeter security tools are, it's always good to have your backup data scanned. Rubrik is really good at analyzing this data. It's good to have that detection. So whether it's at a very small scale or a massive scale, Rubrik is going to tell you through ransomware investigation if it's starting to see any anomalies around data encryption and those things. Rubrik is going to tell you what that blast radius is. So, hey, how far and wide does this actually go? Can even tell you what data was on that. Hey, was there customer data on that specific system that was compromised? And of course, those fast recoveries, right? When it comes down to it, really you need a solution that's going to give you the most bang for the buck. If we can make your recoveries faster, that's that much less labor that you've had to expend to get that recovery done, but also less downtime altogether. And if your organization's revenue is tied to the application uptime, then it's going to be less cost, less risk in the end. So that is really what Rubrik is all about sort of at our foundation. With Kubernetes specifically, we're going to protect that stateless data as we talked about before. It may not seem like it, but in the event the whole world is ending in terms of your CI/CD pipelines, your deployment pipelines, you need to have a way to get that stateless data back up and going. And then, of course, stateful data. This is typically where I get involved in the call, is when organizations start putting stateful data, those persistent volumes, in their Kubernetes cluster. It's sort of moving from that stateless to stateful world with Kubernetes. Any and all of those persistent entities, persistent volumes, persistent volume claims need to get protected to get that application back up and going. And then fine-grained recovery. We have much more granular backups now, much more granular restores as well through those protection sets in version 2 of our Kubernetes protection. Everything inside the namespace can be assigned to one of those policies, or you can pick and choose and do your point-in-time restores to anywhere. It could be the same Kubernetes cluster, different namespace, same namespace, different Kubernetes cluster, different namespace. Huge value in having a single management control plane for managing protection across all of your Kubernetes clusters. Kubernetes clusters, I think, are sort of like rabbits. Once you have one, then you got to have two. You can't have just one. You're always going to have production and maybe a staging and maybe a development. So protecting all those, hooking those into Rubrik is very useful. Again, around the idea of not just using Rubrik as data protection, but also making it part of the development process as well. We talked about data migration, the ability to not just cover sort of the disaster recovery and the migration, but again, also using it to test new versions of Kubernetes in maybe a dev cluster. And finally, one of the most valuable things that I've seen versus some other open source solutions that are out there is having a simple policy engine, not having to manage jobs on a cluster by cluster basis. Just, hey, I need this protected. We need to take a snapshot once per day, twice per day, 100 times per day. We've got you covered. Very simple definition on how you do that inside Rubrik. So we'll sum it up here with Rubrik Kubernetes protection. We've got that policy-driven protection. You assign a policy to a set of objects. You're able to very quickly and easily through that calendar widget in the GUI or even through the API or from kubectl, pick the restore that you want to get to. And then, of course, you have visibility into everything that's protected and what backups that you have for your Kubernetes applications. So thank you all for coming today. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you all later.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jake. Jake is going to stick around for a little bit of live chat response there. So if you do have a question, he might get back to you. But if not, the Rubrik team will also be following up after today's EcoCast for any of your questions and for any of the information you'd like to get from Rubrik about the Rubrik solution. So if you haven't already noticed, feel free to click into the poll that is up right now for everyone there and just let Rubrik know what you are looking for. Data sheets, technical white papers, customer case studies, etc. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Click on the poll and they will make sure you get what you indeed want. Now, if you do want to learn more right away, you can also click out into the Handouts tab and you will see Rubrik's 2-pager overview of cyber protection for Kubernetes across hybrid cloud. It's just a short and sweet PDF document there, so you might want to grab it now. Definitely worth having in your arsenal when you're looking at Kubernetes and containerized environments. And now I've got a little more excitement for all of you today. That is right. It is time for another prize giveaway. And a quick reminder, you must be present at the webinar to win. Our next of the $300 Amazon gift cards going out today is going to Brandon Large from Tennessee. Brandon, a huge congrats to you there. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And don't forget, we still have one more chance to win a $300 Amazon gift card today. And we also have those best question gift cards from each session. Our next presenter will be sticking around for a live Q&A after his presentation, so make sure you are all getting your questions in so that we can collectively pick his brain and make the best use of our time today. And with that, I am excited to introduce from Dynatrace, Kyle Harrington. Kyle is the Senior Principal Solutions Engineer at Dynatrace, and he will be chatting with us here today. All right, so Kyle, are you indeed ready?
I am, and I am in fact a real live human boy. I am actually here. I'm just catching up on the chat here. Just quick funny note, just to prove that I am actually here. I see John Mava threw a comment out earlier. Hopefully not too much shade at one of my co-presenters here, but I couldn't help but notice this comment. It's funny when they say open source is free. It's not. And while I won't comment on the server cost here that we're talking about, just remember that open source is only free if your time is worthless. And that is my tidbit of the day. We'll take no follow-up questions on that. But I will go ahead and steal a mic. I have been told that I can drop 4-letter words in here, that they can't stop me. So if you got any questions in there, feel free to toss them my way. I might add a little more color than you might expect. Anyway.
I like it. Go ahead and kick it off.
Can you tell I'm off the cuff? He's real. So yes, my name is Kyle Harrington. I am the Senior Principal Solutions Engineer at Dynatrace. Man, is that a mouthful. What does that mean? Am I a sales guy? Absolutely, I'm a sales guy. Could you tell by the tone of my voice? But I am here to talk to you about how Dynatrace is helping companies accelerate their platform delivery, as well as right-size and secure their Kubernetes workloads. Yes, I am a sales guy, but I spent 10 years in technology operations. I have bought every possible application, infrastructure, and security solution on the planet. I work here now because I love this product and because it has helped me solve my challenges as a site reliability engineer, as a DevOps engineer, as a NOC manager, and various other titles that they could possibly throw at me, including Senior Principal Solutions Engineer. So first and foremost, right, what does Dynatrace actually do? Right? Well, we are an observability platform, which is built on top of the industry's first purpose-built data lake for data lakehouse for observability data, right? What does that mean? Bunch of buzzwords, right? What we're really doing is we're doing automatic application instrumentation of code, right? We deploy out for Kubernetes as an operator, and we do immediate instrumentation to provide automatic collection of metrics, logs, and traces. Right? We are tying those core pillars of observability back to business data as well as security, security telemetry, right? And what we're doing is we help you contextualize that environment, which is ever changing on data sources, containers, and their related dependencies. And we're providing the ingest of terabytes of metric, log, and trace data daily. All of those data points that we're collecting are used to create a real-time topology model, which is then fed into our proprietary system, fed into our proprietary AI Davis, which then identifies performance baselines of your application stack across all of, there we go. I was trying to find the dang button. I lost it, which is for feeding all that topology model, right? This is the Dynatrace topology. Forgive me, I was on the wrong dang slide. Live demos, everybody, which allows us to feed this data into our AI Davis, right? And this allows us to identify performative baselines of application stack, which provides root cause analysis for application and infrastructure issues, as well as security, right? The data model that we've got in front of you here is what we create can be leveraged to take end user data and develop custom automation actions and remediation tasks and solve long-standing environmental questions around your observability needs and your security posture, right? So how is that possible? What Dynatrace does is we've solved really the data acquisition problem. If you've worked with an infrastructure, an agent for security, an infrastructure or application performance monitoring agent, right? Each of these agents, these platforms, these vendors, they all have their own agent, all right? And what Dynatrace has done here is we have taken that idea of having an agent that provides telemetry data and merged all of those telemetry data points into a single agent, which is what our core product is called, one agent up at the top of the screen there. And what that lets us do is, again, provide all of the telemetry data natively at runtime. So when you deploy a new container, our agent is sitting there waiting inside your cluster or at your host infrastructure to do automatic instrumentation. And we begin collecting the telemetry signals for your application code, from your transaction data. Oops, wrong button again, right? And then we add in an additional layer here for security vulnerabilities by understanding code level data and point-to-point communication by integrating with the Snyk Open Vulnerability Database. And all of this is added to our topology model. This giant Death Star that you're seeing in front of you is how our platform, our AI, sees your data, right? So if you're working with your security team, you're working with your operations team, right? Static scanning solutions, absolutely a requirement. You need to know what your stance is. But by the time you get your static report, right, that information is already out of date, right? It happened an hour ago, 3 hours ago. 300 pods have probably come up in that time. So what we're able to do is reduce the amount of overhead and the amount of time that your teams need to be able to provide not only performance monitoring, but security and security vulnerabilities, and provide context for where the core needs of your security posture need to be addressed, right? So with runtime analysis, we're doing this all in real time. We also offer some functionality to build in, it's a little bit of a delay, sorry, to build in runtime attack protection, right? So if you see a threat, you are able to prevent it in real time from being executed. And of course, we're leveraging that topology model to provide security analysis in context, right? So the goal here is to augment the existing security stance. Code changes, again, are taking place daily, even hourly. So understanding how our lower environment could potentially impact production tomorrow is the name of the game, right? So we're doing security within context, right? Prioritize attacks that can be exploited because they have public internet exposure, or have data that is sitting at rest, that is accessible from that internet exposure, right? With what context we're able to provide, we can identify those vectors, and we can identify the individual services, the containers, the clusters, and the application owners within that call chain to prevent that data that's at risk from being exposed, right? Third-party 0 days are tough to assess. So instead of waiting for that static scan to take place, with runtime vulnerability detection that we're leveraging, Dynatrace can provide answers to, are you even at risk, right? Where are you actually at risk? And how do you create a priority of solving security issues, solving CVEs for the biggest bang for your buck, right? Maybe you guys have heard this little thing called Log4Shell, right? Small little exploit that happened a few years ago, right? When Log4Shell hit, it was a 0-day exploit that nobody was ready for. Right? And leveraging Dynatrace, because we are using application runtime instrumentation, you can see here is a timeline of events of when we started to notify end users, right? Because our platform is seeing runtime instrumentation code as soon as the CVE is published to Snyk, within minutes, we were notifying and alerting our customer base, not only is your environment potentially at risk, but hey, we can actually see where you are currently being exploited because we are doing application performance. We are seeing the Log4Shell binaries actually being run. Fun stuff. But these are just sort of the core pieces that we care about, right? And security and optimization require that you can ask answers of the data that you already have, right? So our platform, the Dynatrace platform, is built to do just that. It doesn't just stop with reporting or blocking attacks, right? What we have inside of our platform built on top of that topology model is a query language, just like everybody else, right? I need to understand what's happening in my environment, right? So leveraging a couple of other features in our platform, we can use the query language to start understanding how CPU slack or memory slack can be right-sized. Are my containers running not just securely, but are they running well? Do they have any right sizing opportunities or cost savings opportunities? All of these features come directly out of the box with us because, again, we're doing automatic instrumentation. You don't need to provide additional metadata Dynatrace or ownership information to say, hey, which one of these workloads has too much memory or no limits set within it. We can immediately identify those needs for you. And of course, for Kubernetes, we're providing end-to-end visibility. So it's not just about the containers or the code that's running inside them, but also the control plane, the runtimes, the exploits, right? Is your version of Kubernetes up to snuff? Do you have an endpoint or an egress point that is accessible from the internet? And can that be exploited? Within the containers themselves, of course, we're finding runtime scans, we're doing real live reporting and identifying security posture. But you can also do ad hoc investigative analysis, understand how real users or even malicious attackers, or even script kiddies are trying to access your data, right? If I want to take a look at any particular access log, or again, an Nginx ingress, I can see the amount of 400s that are taking place there. And that's a great starting point. But what if I need to go back and understand the root cause analysis, do a postmortem of an actual breach, right? With Dynatrace, and again, that topology model that I'm going to keep harping on, what we can do is we can show you every single asset that was accessed. Say that with me, folks. Anybody? We can show you every asset that was accessed across that call chain. Was that database reached? Did that data get exfiltrated? What was the IP address that was pulled from, right? And because we have that data, that opens up a ton of other use cases. Understanding how you can begin to automate your security response is what Dynatrace is trying to do, right? So if you want to automatically create a ticket every time a new vulnerability is identified in your environment, we can do that, right? But what if you find a new vulnerability in production? You probably want to also immediately notify your security operations team. Or you can leverage this platform to see the same IP logging in with different credentials, or maybe the exact same IP is being queried across multiple geolocations through a proxy, right? Take that data and pass it back up to your CDN and block it. The goal here is to give you the data to start answering questions that you're asking of the platform and then action them. If you can think it up, we can make this a reality, right? And that's sort of the goal, is to start leveraging and automating the continuous scanning of your systems into a meaningful collaboration across your teams, right? If everybody's using a different tool set, if somebody's using an application performance monitoring solution to right-size their apps, and your platform engineering team is using CloudWatch to make sure that your containers and your EKS clusters are running well and running up to spec, right? But your security team is using Qualies. None of these tools are talking in the same language, right? None of those are leveraging the same data set. So if none of your teams are working in the same data, you've got to find a way to make them work together. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to bring together your development, your security, and your operations teams and put them all on the same page so you can accelerate delivery, do it quickly, and do it securely. That's all the sales stuff I got for you guys today. What kind of questions can I answer for you?
Okay, excellent. So first of all, thank you for that. We definitely have some questions coming in, so I'm going to pitch some of these to you in a moment. And I know you've got a beautiful graphic up here, but I'm just going to throw up a poll so anyone who's looking for a little more information about the Dynatrace solution can answer that as we go through some questions for you. So, okay, first one I've got here is, what technology personas can best leverage this solution?
Sure. As just kind of wrapped up there, the goal is really kind of anybody. We're really trying to put everybody else on the same page, right? So your development team, your security team, your operations teams can really benefit from the platform. To be clear, though, my opinion here is we're not trying to replace. Again, we're trying to augment. From my standpoint as a long-standing operations guy, I would say your development teams are probably the best users, the best end users for the Dynatrace security solution, simply because we can use that to inform your security posture before you go into production, right? Development teams need to be developing new code, which means they need to update code, which means they need to write new code and leverage new, methods. New vectors get introduced into environments from development, not directly into production. So understanding your security posture in a lower environment, by far, at least in my opinion, is the most important location that we can be best used.
Nice.
Great
And
question.
to follow up on this, I've had a few, people chime in about kind of this like connection between, DevOps, DevSecOps. Can you shed a little more light or dig a little deeper into like, how does that play out, and how does that play out with Dynatrace?
Sure. Again, it's about the data model, right? Everything that we're trying to do is entirely built on top of what we call that smartscape, that topology model. Putting your security, your operations team, it sounds silly, but working from the same data point, right? Your platform engineering team might try to go in and run a top on an EC2 instance, and your development team may be looking at pod memory allocation, right? So you're saying, hey, my thing's slow, my thing's not performing as I expected. Even these simple things of looking at like how a CPU metric is identified and how your teams review them, putting them on the same page is really the way and the best way to foster that collaboration, right? You're kind of breaking down a very simple silo in a very simple way there, just by saying, hey, we're using the same data set, right? And that's how you really start building an observability solution. Hot take there, right? Like if everybody is looking at the same data type, but it's not the same data point, you're never going to get on the same page.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the clarification on that. Next question I've got for you is from Paul. Paul's asking, how does Dynatrace reduce false positives in our security posture?
Hey, Paul, great question, right? So how we're doing security, right, is again, we are integrating with the application performance, the performative data that our platform provides. And the way that we do that is runtime instrumentation. Behind the scenes, we're also doing like distributed tracing and some other interesting technology. But the reality is that Dynatrace is always working with live data. If I go back to the sneak vulnerability that we identified to Log4j, right? What Dynatrace is doing is every time a user hits login on a web page, right, fills out a form, Dynatrace sees those transactions. So what I'm able to do is I can tell you, sure, the JVM version that you're running, the code version that you're running has the potential to have this exploit. And that's what you get with static scans. But with Dynatrace, what I'm able to do is say, wait a minute, I actually see this method being invoked. You can also go back to maybe a similar parallel, my time as an operations engineer, right? You used to have kernel level vulnerabilities. Hey, yeah, these need to get patched. There are 0-day exploits. But do those matter as much if you're in a lower environment where nobody can actually access your infrastructure? Probably not. But if you have a server that's publicly accessible and that exploit is available, those are the things that you want to prioritize. And that's how Dynatrace kind of accelerates that, right? Is that we have the contextual information to see the entire call chain, and adding in the data points to say, am I potentially exposed versus am I actually under attack, right? That's the difference for us.
Nice, excellent. Thank you for those details.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, next one. What should we ask? Okay, this one here. What is the overhead processing needed for real-time security?
Absolutely. So that's a super easy one, right? Zero, actually. So what Dynatrace does is we do runtime instrumentation. The way that we are adding in our agent tracers is through distributed tracing. So we're just adding in a header from the gRCP, HTTP requests through through your methods, through your code. But all of the processing to identify, hey, how is this code performing? And then marrying that with that vulnerability database, that happens on our back end. So we're not adding any additional overhead to provide security scaling.
Awesome. Sound great.
It's not so bad.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, Dan Belsey's asking, how does the integration of security practices within our DevOps pipeline, particularly in the Kubernetes environment monitored by Dynatrace, ensure that vulnerabilities are identified and remediated early in the development cycle? I think you've touched on that a little bit, but feel free to elaborate there.
Yeah, sure. So the goal for us, right? I touched a little bit on it in the automation. The goal for us is to get integrated directly with your pipeline, right? So we kind of talked, I showed a little bit of the telemetry and the topology model, but where Dynatrace plays best, right, is when you can use our data to inform actions. So in this case, what we'd be doing, right, is you don't need to set up Dynatrace in any way to provide this, excuse me, to provide the security data. So I'm a developer, I'm developing a new feature, right? And I've got to upgrade my Node.js version to include a new package that I've never used before in order to integrate with a new database, right? That one of my my infrastructure teams is now moving us to. I don't know anything about this code. Maybe I've never even seen it before, but I'm going to develop it. My feature works great, but unbeknownst to me, I've developed this new vulnerability in a lower environment. What happens with Dynatrace? What we want to do is we want to integrate, we'll just say GitOps for the sake of argument right now. We want to integrate with your direct GitOps pipeline. So I'm a dev, I push this code up, I'm getting ready to test this from my dev environment into a staging environment. And as soon as that new code version pops up, Dynatrace creates an entity record of the new version appearing, of the actual methods being invoked there, right? And then would create a notification to your team to say, hey, we've identified this new security scam, this new security vulnerability, right? And the goal here would be to feed that event data as an approval button, put it into Slack, put it into Microsoft Teams and say, hey, use the existing chat ops or GitOps methodologies that you're already using, but take the data points that we have to inform those. Like, hey, we see this version test is passed. Create a quality gate. Maybe you do it through a human to say, hey, the performative baseline hasn't changed, but there is a new vulnerability here. Do you want to let this pass? Do you want to accept the risk, or do you want to halt it, right? So now you've identified something that would potentially impact production in a staging environment long before it would ever reach anything in prod. And you can feel free to follow with me on that as well.
So speaking of those kind of integrations with Slack, Teams, etc., what other integrations are you seeing your current users use a lot? Or are there any hot tips of how this can be deployed in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the fun part about Dynatrace, right, is our APIs are entirely open. So you can feed any amount of data in, any amount of data out. I would say without question, the overwhelming use case that I've seen is to integrate with ticketing systems, whether it be Jira or ServiceNow, right? The goal here is operations has somebody says, hey, we're going to go through CAB, we're going to accept this risk, we're going to make this deployment on Tuesdays because that's when we work with it. And how our customers are leveraging that is to use our two-way communication to leverage, we'll say ServiceNow has a CMDB, that entity model that I was sharing previously, that can be used to directly feed into ServiceNow to populate that CMDB. So as you are spinning up new containers, as you are spinning up new CIs in ServiceNow, we can feed that data in. So then if Dynatrace finds a security vulnerability, we can then send that data back to that CI as part of your change approval process to say, hey, we found this, or hey, we are going to update this new version in production, and we can feed that data from ServiceNow into the Dynatrace entity. So when I'm reviewing it and I'm saying, hey, this CPU doesn't look like it has a limit set on this container. How did that happen? I can track that back to the event that took place from the Jira ticket and say, oh, you know what? We need to go back and add another action item during our next CAB to push the updated version of this with a CPU limit so we don't burn through resource.
That's great. I think it kind of lays it out in such a easily understandable way. So thank you.
Thanks.
I mean, well, and if you know a lot about tech and are a developer and so on. But
I've been through plenty of cabs, my friend.
Indeed. So we're coming close to time, but I always like to ask, is there, if someone is interested, they want to get started, they want to try this out, where should they go? What should they do? And or do you have any kind of final call to action or things you really want to impress upon everyone in the audience today?
Oh, sure. You can absolutely go to dynatrace.com/trial, which will spin you up a 15-day free trial of our platform. It has no caps, no limits. Everything that I've shown you here is directly accessible. If you don't have the ability to deploy, we actually have a playground environment that's also accessible from that trial. So you can see some of this stuff actually take place in real time. I guess from a call to action, I'll say it again. I am the senior principal solutions engineer here at Dynatrace. I am totally a sales guy. But again, I bought the product because it made a huge difference in my time collaborating with development teams, working with security teams, working with the rest of my SRE org. I will take the Pepsi challenge against anything else, even trying to closely compete in our space. And I'll just call them out. We'll call out the Splunks and the Datadogs and the New Relics of the world. That's who we are, fighting against, so to speak. So if any of those names sound familiar, come take a look. Take the Pepsi challenge, and feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. I'm going to let you go, but this has been really lovely, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Now, if you guys are looking to get started right away, again, you can click right into that Handouts tab, and we actually have the Dynatrace website linked in there, or hop over to that Dynatrace/trial, like Kyle was suggesting, if you want to take a hands-on approach. Or, of course, reach out to Kyle and the team, and it sounds like they'd be very happy to help you and have you experience Dynatrace and all that it can do. Now, with that, we're going to keep things zipping along. Thank you to everyone who filled out that poll. Thank you for everyone who did throw in your questions. We do have one final team here about to present. I hate to say it, but we are getting close to the end of today's EcoCast. So I hope you won't be sad, because we have a fantastic final presenter for you here from Lightbit Labs. Felix Milligan is the principal solution engineer over at Lightbit Labs. And I'm also going to have a lively Q&A with Felix after this. So again, keep those questions coming in. Felix, I think we're lucky here to have you, because your name, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in Latin means luck. Is that true?
Yeah, you could be right. I need to look it up, obviously. It's I just know myself as the same name as the cat, right? Famous cats, that's what I go for.
Nice. Awesome. Well, welcome here. I'll let you take it away, and then I'll be joining you for some Q&A at the end.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, I know everyone's been on this call for a long time, so we'll try to say the best till last. Today, we're going to be talking about optimizing our Kubernetes environment with a data platform that scales just like your Kubernetes environment does. As we just mentioned, my name is Felix Milligan, and I'm Principal Solutions Engineer here at Lightbit Labs. So we can answer any technical questions as we go through. Please use the Q&A. I do have two people who are watching that Q&A and try and answer questions. And if we don't get to your question, we'll try and answer at the end. Should be about 20 minutes with about 5 minutes Q&A. Right, I have to try and stick to that now. So we're going to cover today. We're going to look at what companies are looking at from a modern Kubernetes solution. We're looking at limitation of common storage architectures. We're going to be looking at why use software-defined storage and NVMe over TCP. So that's a big hint about what Lightbit is and what we do. We're going to be looking at Lightbit for Kubernetes clouds, both public, private, and then the hybrid environment. We're going to be looking at the architectures and benchmarking of those environments. And then we're going to be looking at features and advantages specifically for agile DevOps. Finally, we're going to cover a couple of our customers and how their companies built Kubernetes clouds with Lightbit as the central storage platform. And like I said, we'll finish with some Q&A. Okay, so we've got a lot of data here for you. So what are customers actually using Kubernetes for, specifically when it comes to data-intensive services? And when I say data-intensive services, it means persistency in the storage. And usually it's high demand on that storage, whether it be large capacity or capacity and performance reasons. And these are three areas that you'll be very familiar with, right? Databases, analytics, and AI and machine learning. People are using Kubernetes for these stateful applications, right? Distributed databases that require high availability and huge scale. Analytics workloads, of course, require dramatic scale. And then AI and machine learning, which is obviously a huge buzzword and a boom at the moment, but people are definitely using Kubernetes in order to provide the scale out environment for those very, very integral workloads. Do you know what? The data is central to those workloads. You can't do AI and machine learning without a data set. You can't have a database without all the table information, right? So data is very, very important. So what do customers expect from a storage solution within their Kubernetes environment? Okay, so high availability is just an absolute given, right? And Kubernetes has some methods of doing this at the application side. You can use things like stateful sets to achieve this. But what happens when a disaster happens? What happens when maybe your stateful set isn't enough? Is your storage going to be resilient enough? And as people migrate and optimize applications from potentially bare metal through virtual into VMs and then into Kubernetes and containers and microservices, are people really thinking about that high availability aspect and critical data, how available that data is? Maybe you're looking at applications, but are you looking at the data those applications are using? People are looking at a unified platform for containers and VMs, right? Because a lot of people are in that transition phase, right? They're taking those monolithic applications that used to run on VMs, and you have best practices that you've been using for over 15, 20 years to run those applications, and then migrating them and pushing them into microservices. So they want a platform that can support both of those environments as they transition. Looking at central management plane, hey, ease of use, right? Maybe you want your platform to be able to plug straight into your Prometheus and Grafana, which is the same platform that you use to monitor your solutions, or any other platform that you're using to monitor your solutions. And then, towards the bottom here, but still a very high percentage of people who want the following, and that is high performance Kubernetes storage, automated capacity management. Kubernetes, in essence, is a very largely automated platform. We expect hyperscalability out of Kubernetes. Well, if the storage can't keep up with that scalability, then your applications are going to be bottlenecked or lagging behind. And finally, just a streamlined hybrid multi-cloud environment. Kubernetes is supposed to be composable. You're supposed to be able to deploy your applications anywhere using Kubernetes. So they want to maintain that for their Kubernetes environment and deploy it anywhere. Maybe they want to burst the cloud. Maybe they want to burst between data centers. That's something that they need to be able to do. Now, what our customers are telling us is that a lot of the existing storage solutions that they're using in their environments aren't working well for Kubernetes, right? So they're using either SAN, so storage area networking, the kind of old school buy an appliance, dual headed, shared disk, and then present that maybe over SCSI or fiber channel. Or maybe they're using direct attached storage, local disk. Maybe they're using hyperconverged infrastructure where the compute is directly linked towards the storage. And if you need to scale, you need to scale both. All of those, they're telling us, just doesn't have the flexibility that they require with their Kubernetes infrastructure. And they need something that's more scalable. And then on the other side, if you're looking at kind of the native cloud storage, right, your Azures, your AWS, there's usually insufficient performance for those mission critical apps, right? Those highly performance intensive or latency sensitive applications. And if you can get the performance out of the cloud native storage, it comes with a premium, right? You have to pay a lot of money. You're often paying per IOP or per megabyte a second for that storage solution. And even if you can get that performance, it's usually not zonal, or it's zonal in nature, and you can't have the high availability of the storage, and therefore you need to turn back to the application. You need to application level replication, for example. Now, a lot of people try and overcome these limitations by building for these specific environments. And in the end, that's just going to lock you into a specific vendor or cloud platform because you're building your applications for an environment. And that's the complete opposite of what we want to do with Kubernetes. So Lightbits is trying to tackle these kind of three areas, right? Direct attached storage and the limitations that come with it, SAN and the traditional SANs and the limitations that come with them, as well as hyperconverged infrastructure and their limitations. I'll just talk about a couple of the limitations that we come across often when it comes to our customers migrating applications to Kubernetes or just running their applications across heterogeneous environments with Kubernetes. Often the first problem with SAN is that it's usually on a proprietary appliance, right? So that's where that vendor lock-in comes. You choose your vendor and you pretty much have to stick with them and upgrade with them for 5, 7, 10 years. Well, often you don't really understand your applications enough to be able to plan that far ahead, right? You need something that's composable, just like Kubernetes is. You want to be able to purchase hardware as you need it. For direct attached storage, for example, oftentimes people will just have a form factor and they deploy it, right? So you're basically creating hyperconvergence because you're deploying these infrastructure systems with maybe, let's say, 3-4 terabyte NVMe devices or 4 terabyte NVMe devices because it's easier to do that way. But what you end up with is environments that are underutilized and over-provisioned. So you have a load of orphan storage hanging out there. Maybe you're not using the capacity, let alone the performance that you have. And there's a similar message with hyperconverged infrastructure. In order to scale those infrastructures, you have to purchase your compute and your storage together. So if you just need more compute for your Kubernetes environment, hey, you're purchasing storage. Well, I don't need it, and therefore I have orphan storage, and I basically wasted money on that spare storage that's sitting out there being underutilized. With all of this comes cost. So if you're building a cloud or cloud native applications, you're effectively building your own cloud. Whether you're utilizing the public cloud or whether you're building your own internal cloud with your own infrastructure on premises or in a data center like a colo, all of these cost a lot of money, right? You're usually trying to get more performance for your applications. And so you're dropping a lot of money on very expensive storage, and then you're not using it. So as I said before, you often run into these storage performance bottlenecks because maybe you've under-provisioned your storage for a specific workload, or maybe Kubernetes is migrating your workloads between machines, and these different machines are truly heterogeneous, and they have different storage footprints. And then there's always the scalability limitations as well. Like I said before, maybe your applications just need more compute. Maybe you just need a bit more memory, but you don't want storage as well. Maybe you just need storage and your compute levels are fine. You're just increasing the capacity that your applications require. That's a really common use case too. So how does Lightbits overcome these issues? So Lightbits is a software-defined block storage piece of software, which is highly scalable and highly available at all times. We have our own CSI plugin, and so we run these storage-intensive applications in containers at very, very low latency with incredibly high performance limits. So you can run millions of IOPS to your applications and not have to worry about how the storage is composed in the backend. We have a huge cluster of Lightbits, you have a huge Kubernetes cluster, and your applications just pick up storage as they need it. Therefore, we're removing those storage performance bottlenecks, but also we're cutting costs of applications because we're better utilizing our storage that we need. If all of your applications are drawing from the storage pool, in order to increase the amount of storage, you just need to increase the storage pool and all your applications can then grow, not per node on the Kubernetes side. We're providing you ultra high availability for stronger data protection with up to 3 copies throughout the cluster, as well as just that whole idea of having a cloud scale flexible storage solution. And we're built all on top of NVMe over TCP. So that means you don't have to change your underlying networking in order to use Lightbits. So this is kind of how it looks like, right? We have our Lightbits cluster, which is NVMe backed, providing NVMe TCP over TCP IP networking over Ethernet, end-to-end NVMe style performance with low latency and high performance. And then we scale the storage and compute independently. So your applications can grow naturally rather than having to fit in an infrastructure form factor. We have intelligent flash management, which enables you to use QLC, cheaper SSDs for the ultimate price performance. And we also extend the flash endurance by 20% using this intelligent flash management capability. So we have no service disruption after a node or drive loss. There's redundancy all throughout the infrastructure stack, from drive to CPU to networking. So we can always handle any issues that happen in the data center, just like your Kubernetes infrastructure should be able to. Non-destructive rolling software upgrades, which you'd expect. And like I said, up to 3-way replication. And this takes this concept of failure domains into consideration. So you can set separate areas of maybe power cooling in the data center or in the cloud zones, and they can become your failure domains just like you'd have in your Kubernetes cluster. So you might be new to NVMe TCP. You might not have heard about it, but it's been around for a very long time now. And as you can see, lots of companies are starting to adopt or have already adopted the NVMe TCP protocol. It effectively enables you to run very, very high performance storage across standard Ethernet networking. And our customers range from maybe just 25 gig links all the way up to 100 gig plus links between the storage and their compute nodes, depending on their application requirements. So it's extremely high performance and very low latency. We're talking about a couple of hundred microseconds of latency for hundreds of thousands or millions of IOPS. So how does it look in practice? Well, you've got your Kubernetes worker nodes on the left-hand side and your master nodes as well. Your worker nodes are running your applications, right? So those worker nodes individually will connect to Lightbits over standard Ethernet and NVMe TCP. And those volumes will be placed across the cluster and replicated on the right-hand side on the Lightbits side. Now, we have our CSI driver. It's actually open source as well, so you can check out the code in it. We use that CSI driver. Your applications can use persistent volume claims to set up those volumes on the Lightbits side, those block storage volumes. And then the CSI driver will create a persistent volume with a file system on those worker nodes. And your worker nodes can then just use that storage for their applications. What this gives you is the ability to migrate workloads between nodes, or for Kubernetes to migrate workloads between nodes and still maintain that same storage on the right-hand side. So less replication on the application layer and more resiliency. This is the tech stack. So you've got orchestration by Kubernetes, you've got all your applications in pods running using the CSI driver, which is creating volumes on the Lightbits storage and connecting to them via NVMe over TCP using standard TCP/IP Ethernet networking. So you can effectively use your current built-in infrastructure, but get extremely high performance that you might think you'd need to buy purpose-built infrastructure for. And that already saves you money. And we do work in the cloud as well. So we have an on-prem offering, software defined, just install on NVMe-backed hardware, and then Lightbits can create a cluster out of those infrastructure nodes. Or we can deploy in AWS or Azure. And we work natively with AKS or EKS as well. So you can use Lightbits in Azure, on-prem, or in AWS, same infrastructure in the backend effectively, same software running in all three. And therefore your Kubernetes clusters, wherever they're running, get the same look and feel of using Lightbits with very high performance block storage. Now, Lightbits in the cloud specifically really overcomes some performance bottlenecks that we've had from customers. Expensive cloud storage just not giving the latency, performance, or durability that they require. And then they've moved to Lightbits and they found that none of that is a concern anymore. Lightbits is already highly available. We are high performance, and we also are generally cheaper than the cloud native solutions as well. So we save you money, even if you're not having to over provision that storage for performance, which people often do and spending more money on that. We can optimize environments in other ways as well. This is an example of Lightbits against Ceph. This is a really common configuration that Lightbits gets compared to, mostly because we are software defined, hyperscalable storage, and Ceph is the same thing. But as you can see, Lightbits is a completely different level. And this is where not having to worry about your environment really comes into play. So like 4K, 100% reads, 3.94, nearly 4 times the performance of those small block sizes. For writes, we're up to 16, nearly 17 times the performance of Ceph. And even in a kind of 80-20 environment with 8K, 12.5 times performance than the equivalent Ceph. And that's on a 12-node Kubernetes environment with identical hardware configuration on the Lightbits and the Ceph side. So same price for both infrastructures, but you get a whole lot more with Lightbits. In terms of DevOps, which often Kubernetes environments are just suited for DevOps. You have the whole CI/CD pipeline where you're developing, you're building, you're deploying, you're monitoring, and then you're changing again, optimizing. So with Lightbits, we use thin clones and snapshots, and that's using the native Kubernetes snapshotting tools in order to rapidly spin up new environments, clone real-life data into immutable clones, and then use that for your DevOps environment. So your developers can have access to genuine data, but you don't have to worry about them modifying the original data set. That's still protected. That is completely immutable from those cloned environments. And then you just destroy them when you're done. And you keep that process going. So some examples of customers that we've helped already: a huge e-commerce giant who built their Kubernetes environment on Lightbits. They have millions of users with millions of daily visits and millions of monthly shipments they have to track. Lightbits underpins this entire environment with a range of workloads: Kafka, MySQL, MongoDB, Aerospike, Cassandra, HBase, Redis, Elasticsearch. I'm sure all of these are applications that you run in your Kubernetes environment today. This customer runs all of that on Lightbits because what they want is an approach for their data centers that is as scalable as their applications must be. E-commerce in nature is highly scalable. There's always busy periods and downtime. And so the applications need to scale with those busy periods and downtime, but so does their storage. And Lightbits helps them do that. Now, they're not just on premises, they also run in the Azure cloud. So we're helping them in both environments. What they found with Lightbits is that they get huge flexibility. So they can run on any cloud or hardware configuration with our CSI. And you know what? We've been with them long enough. They've been through iterations of hardware in the back end. And so they have a pretty much heterogeneous environment that Lightbits runs on top of. Different vendors, different hardware, running the same Lightbits platform. They get independent scaling in any direction for performance or capacity, i.e. when those busy periods happen, maybe it's just their compute nodes that need to scale. So they can do that without having to scale their storage as well, and that saves them cost. And that affects their bottom line and increases their ROI. And then there's the efficiency of having a really resilient storage with that local flash performance, right? Direct attached storage isn't resilient. You can lose a drive and you lose the entire node. But drives go down, they fail, that happens. But with Lightbits, not only are we protecting at the drive layer, but we're also protecting at the volume layer with replicas. So multiple things can go wrong, and you can still be chugging along absolutely happily with your storage. And then they have that agility, the agility to move and shift applications around different environments and allocate storage to any cloud at any time. Another example is MetalStack. So MetalStack are a company out of EMEA who launched Kubernetes as a service with Lightbits underpinning that service. So they provide Kubernetes as a service on bare metal with elastic cloud infrastructure. They want high performance because they want to target very demanding applications. They have strict data protection and security compliance because of the EU regulations. And they want strong tenant separation, so RBAC controls, so they can serve multiple customers with a kind of single back-end infrastructure. They also don't want to affect other customers with noise neighbor syndrome, for example. They want streamlined management and self-service API for customers. And lucky for them, Lightbits is fully API driven. So if you need to do more than the CSI can provide you, you can automate that process extremely simply with Lightbits. So what they found that our performance absolutely rivals local flash, but we have incredible scalability. You're no longer linked between compute and storage. Lightbits provides you that flash performance with disaggregation, the benefits of that independent scalability. Because they're using persistent storage claims or persistent volume claims with persistent storage backends, it means that their storage is disaggregated from their compute, which means they can scale compute resources independently, but it also means that they can reduce form factors or buy slightly cheaper client specs because they don't have to size them out for the storage as well. So you offload a lot of the storage CPU power that you need to run local storage. You offload that to Lightbits. And then they have that clustered architecture, super high availability, built-in snapshotting, and efficiencies such as compression. And you can even encrypt end-to-end using the Lightbits CSI plugin. And this all competes with hyperscalers and their native cloud solutions. It's a really good competitor, very high performance, low cost, and hyper scalable. And they're rivaling people like AKS and EKS. So in summary, what's the value of Lightbits, especially for Kubernetes? So we are absolutely ideal for Kubernetes because we are available for private Kubernetes environments, on-prem or in colos, as well as Azure, as well as AWS. We deliver very, very high performance. And this isn't for the cluster. This is on the client side. 4 million IOPS for storage-intensive Kubernetes apps on a single node. That's very, very high performance. More performance than you'll probably need. But you spread an entire cluster's worth of performance across a large Kubernetes environment, and that's where you need that performance. We have low TCO to control those on-premises costs, the ability to use QLC devices, for example, as well as have that kind of composable back-end infrastructure, which means that you can save costs by going to your favorite vendor rather than having to buy a full appliance and then you're stuck with that appliance for a period of time. You can effectively look at which OEM makes more sense and go with them, maybe even every year. I don't know how your environment is, but some of our customers do change that often. You got snapshots and clones for DevOps, obviously thin snapshots and clones, so you're not taking up a bunch of storage on the storage backend just because you want to do DevOps, right? Everything is thin, so you won't even really see a huge performance or a huge capacity increase when you're running your CI/CD pipelines. We are fully software defined, being able to support actually thousands of Kubernetes nodes per Lightbits cluster with thousands, tens of thousands of volumes or persistent volume claims on a single Lightbits cluster. We're built on NVMe TCP, which gives us that edge to be able to use that standard TCP/IP networking, but still provide that extreme high performance. And not only that, not only are we durable at all the different layers for the hardware stack, but we can heal ourselves and scale incredibly easily. If you need more storage, you can either put more drives in the bays of the Lightbits nodes, or you can add Lightbits nodes to a Lightbits cluster. And because of the way that we allocate volumes across the cluster, they're spread completely across the cluster between your failure domains. And therefore your Kubernetes environment can start using the new nodes, and Lightbits will even balance volumes based on capacity for you. So you don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about ensuring that your Kubernetes environment runs smoothly. I had a customer say the other day that we were an absolute set and forget solution. They didn't have to worry about us when they woke up in the morning. They just run their applications on us and don't have to worry. And that's a huge thing in an infrastructure environment. So you get your network and clients unchanged using maybe off the shelf or infrastructure that you already have in your data center and repurposing. We get multi-tenancy, and more importantly, there's no proprietary software on the client itself. NVMe of the TCP is built into the Linux kernel already. And so there's no agent on the client. There's no software that Lightbits manages on the client. We obviously have our CSI, which is open source. But everything else is just composable. And then we have our intelligent flash management, thin provisioning, compressioning, thin snapshots and clones, and that built-in data protection, so you know your data is safe. So I'm going to go to the Q&A portion now. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about Lightbits and how we can help you on your Kubernetes journey and in your environment. And if you've got any questions, please shout them out.
All right, excellent. So we definitely have some questions that have come in while you were presenting. So I'm going to pose some of these to you now. And if you guys do have more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll give them a quick review as well as we come to wrap things up here. I'm going to leave this up just a minute, these QR codes. So if anyone's looking to learn more about Lightbits or talk to Lightbits, grab those now, and then I will throw up a final poll about halfway through the questions here. But I'll give you a little time to check those out. And with that, okay, Felix, question number one, let's dive into it. Someone is asking here, which databases have you or the customers at Lightbits already tested?
We have customers using a bunch of different databases. One of the customer case studies actually went through a few: Kafka, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, MySQL. If it's a workload that requires high performance storage and it runs in Kubernetes, one of our customers has probably run it. So logging platforms or databases, all the above, really. Cassandra is a big one as well. Kubernetes lends itself to these really scale out databases that kind of need to scale for performance purposes or maybe capacity purposes. So, the Kafkas, the Cassandras of the world, we work really, really well with that. Postgres is another huge one that our customers like us for, especially with some of the work that's been done recently with PostgreSQL performance in Kubernetes. You're seeing a lot of Postgres.
Okay, excellent. I've just got a bunch of questions. Throw them at you here. Next one is, how does Lightbits handle data redundancy and failover in case of hardware or network failures?
It's a good question. So I talked a little bit about the fact that we have redundancy of the stack. So at the drive layer, we have erasure coding. So if you lose a single drive, no problem at all. That node will still keep going, serving data. Now, if you lose a second drive, as long as the data is rebalanced, because we fix ourselves as well in the back end, we actually provide N+1 data durability at the drive layer. So if you have 8 drives and you lose one and you have 7 left, as long as you have capacity to balance the rest of the data across the remaining drives, once the data has been rebuilt, we can lose another drive and you can end up with 6. You can keep doing that until you end up running out of capacity in the back end. So huge redundancy at the drive layer. And you can also add drives in a similar way, live add drives if you need to scale up. Now, in terms of resiliency across nodes, for example, in a cluster, we do replication. So every persistent volume, you can select a replica count. And that can be 1, maybe for DevOps, or scratch space. It can be 2, or it can be 3. So you can have up to 3 copies of each persistent volume across the cluster and separated by failure domain. So if a node fails, or you lose multiple drives at the same time, or you have a network issue between your clients and the nodes, or the nodes themselves, or maybe you're just running, a BIOS upgrade, then your data is absolutely safe and you still have the remaining copies of the data. And NVMe over TCP, incredibly smart as a protocol. The client actually connects to every target in the cluster, which means it doesn't matter where your volumes are. If a node fails, they'll just pick up another path to the cluster. So it's extremely resilient.
Incredible. Our keynote speaker today mentioned if you didn't have 3 copies of your data, it doesn't exist. So I think this kind of covers that.
2 is 1 and 1 is none is what I was always told.
Okay,
so you need at least 3 because then you have 2.
Love that. See, these are good takeaways today. Things I'm learning. I'm always learning. So I got to quickly throw up the poll. So if you are out in the audience and you're curious about some more information from Lightbits Labs, just let them know what you're looking for. Data sheets, pricing details, personal demos, a white paper, etc. I'm going to leave that up while we go through a few more questions. I've got a question that came in from Michael Wish. He's asking, does Lightbits use its own proprietary file system?
No, we don't actually. So that's a really good question. So Lightbits provides block storage to the clients, and then our CSI overlays standard file systems on top of it. Now that could be XFS, it could be ext4. Really, Lightbits as a storage is block, and then you can overlay any file system at the client side. That's one of the beauties of it. It's extremely high performance block storage, which means that it has high levels of usage that you can kind of tune to what you need.
Okay, excellent. Next in the queue is, what management tools and interfaces does Lightbits provide for monitoring and maintaining storage in Kubernetes?
It's a good question. So Lightbits is fully API driven, as I said. When we're talking about monitoring, we like to fit in with our customers' environments. So today, most of our customers use what we call our exporter, which exports metrics into Prometheus, and then they usually just display that in Grafana. It's one of the most common ways to monitor Kubernetes and generally IT environments today, but we can work with many different environments. So 90% of our customers, really, they just kind of push it to Prometheus, and then they deal with it. They have to display it in Grafana or some other tool sets, and then they usually do their alerting that way as well. So net, we kind of like to fit in with whatever our customers are doing, but we can work with a lot.
Very nice. Highly flexible.
Exactly. That's a good word. I should use that.
Anytime, use it up. So we are kind of coming to the end of time, but any final call to action or anywhere you'd like to point those who are curious to check out more about Lightbits that are in the audience today?
Yeah, sure. So first, visit our website, www.lightbitslabs.com. There's plenty of information there. We have Kubernetes pages. We have cloud-specific pages, whether it be private or public cloud, white papers, blogs, you name it. We have a bunch of things on our website you can start off with. Also, all of our documentation is completely public. So if you want to see how easy it is to deploy Lightbits, you can go to our website, look at our documentation, and see yourself. Now, if you want to try us out, if you want to do it on-prem, you can get in touch with us. If you want to do it in the cloud, we're available in the AWS and Azure Marketplace, and you can deploy us on your own without having to ever talk to me, if that's your kind of thing. I know a lot of devs are like that, especially with Kubernetes. You kind of want to try it yourself before talking to anyone. So if you're in the cloud, you can do that.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, great place to go. If you are out there and curious, you know where to go now. And then again, we also have our handout from Lightbits, the solution brief, Lightbits persistent storage for Kubernetes. So make sure you go grab that before we wrap up today. And with that, I am going to say thank you so much one final time. And hopefully we'll have you back, Felix. And it was great having you on the EcoCast today.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for listening.
A pleasure. Until next time. All right, everyone. So again, this was our fifth and final fantastic presentation talking about securing, backing up, and optimizing Kubernetes and containerized environments. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a lot. Again, if you have not yet hopped over into the handouts tab, please make sure that you do. You are only going to have a couple more minutes to grab all those awesome links and PDFs, ebooks, solution briefs. So don't miss your chance to do that. You're going to want to hold on to all that valuable information. If you did ask a question today and we didn't quite get to it, do not fret. All the teams here will be past the questions you've sent in and be able to follow up with you for any information you're looking for, as well as if you did answer one of the polls and wanted some further information, that will come shortly after today. I do have that final poll up here for just a couple more seconds. So if you haven't answered it, please do, because after that, I am going to be giving away our third and final $300 Amazon gift card and wrapping things up for the day. So 1, 2, 3, are you ready? Our third and final $300 Amazon gift card is going out to Elizabeth Cook from Illinois. And just to recap, these are the 3 lucky winners from today's EcoCast. Gift card 1 went out to David Rudick from Maryland. The second to Brandon Large from Tennessee. And the third and final to Elizabeth Cook from Illinois. Huge congratulations to all of you. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And do not forget that you may also win one of those best question gift cards. And if you did sign up for one of the Keeper demos, you're also going to get a gift card from there. So tons of prizes today. Whoever thought that learning would be so lucrative? And I hope that it was enjoyable for you. Now, if you are in the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, EcoCast, or MegaCast webinar, we would love to hear from you. Reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com and we can start the conversation there. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank our speakers from Keeper Security, Lacework, Rubrik, Dynatrace, and Lightbits Labs for making this EcoCast possible. And a special thank you to all of you for attending the EcoCast today, for asking some great questions as well, and really bringing up the engagement in this conversation. It's not always easy to carve out the time in our schedules to learn, be proactive, and plan ahead. And I am so glad that you did just that today. This has been such fun, such a great conversation, and a great way to approach securing, backing up, and optimizing containerized environments. I hope you've got some interesting ideas and tips. I hope you feel a little bit more informed and lit up and ready to tackle and implement some of these opportunities at your organization. And most of all, I hope you had fun with me today. And before you take off, be sure to mark your calendars and come back to join us soon. Coming up in about a week, we've got supercharging public sector and education technology and security. So if you are indeed involved in the public sector and education technology spheres, and you want to look at how to secure that data and supercharge your offense, absolutely come join us June 20th. That's a Thursday, same time, 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. And with that, I hope to see you all again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely magical rest of your day. Take care.